Merci beaucoup. Alors, il me fait grand plaisir de présenter Dr Amita DHANDA, qui est donc à notre droite. Elle est professeure de droit à l'université de Nalsar en Inde. Vous aurez pu noter donc qu'elle a déjà travaillé avec Monsieur Gombo, s'ils se connaissent bien, et elle est directrice du Centre d'études sur les handicaps. Elle a rédigé sa thèse qui était intitulée « Ordre juridique et désordre mental », tout un programme, dans les années, qui a été publiée, cette thèse, dans les années 2000 aux éditions Sage, et sa thèse a été extrêmement bien reçue par la communauté internationale. Et c'était une thèse qui, à l'époque, a vraiment fait grand bruit parce que elle portait sur le droit indien concernant les malades mentaux, et c'était le premier travail en Inde qui proposait une évaluation des lois indiennes sur la santé mentale à l'aune des droits de l'homme. Donc à l'époque, elle a été publiée, je vous le rappelle, en 2000. À l'époque, on n'avait pas encore la Convention sur le droit des personnes en situation de handicap. Dr DHANDA est experte sur la question de la capacité juridique. C'est à ce titre d'experte sur la capacité juridique qu'elle a travaillé auprès du World Network of Users and Survivors of Psychiatry, donc le réseau mondial des usagers et des survivants de la psychiatrie. Et elle a participé aux discussions sur la rédaction même de cet article 12 sur lequel on s'interroge aujourd'hui en tant que porte-parole de la société civile. Donc c'était elle qui a fait toutes les déclarations de la société civile, les interventions sur cet article 12 lors de son processus de négociation. Donc elle a vraiment un regard de l'interne. Alors ça fait plus de 35 ans que Dr DHANDA consacre ses efforts d'écriture, de recherche, de plaidoyer à la question de la mise en conformité du droit indien et plus particulièrement de la loi sur le handicap à la Convention des Nations Unies relative aux personnes handicapées. Et ses publications très nombreuses, les plus récentes portent sur la question du droit de la santé et des droits humains, la notion de la capacité juridique, telle que comprise dans le cadre de la Convention relative aux droits des personnes handicapées, et la problématique de l'harmonisation des législations nationales et des pratiques avec les normes de cette Convention. Alors, comme pour M. Gambos, on avait donc les mêmes questions qui ont été posées à Dr DHANDA pour avoir un fil conducteur dans les présentations. Alors, sans plus tarder, je vous laisse la parole. Merci. It's up to you.
Thank you so much. Or I suppose I can venture to say merci beaucoup, because that's maybe the most French I have. With Gabor's presentation, see, Article 12 is about recognition of the person before the law. And I think with Gabor's presentation, we got the person in, and what exactly, who's the person whose recognition we are seeking, and exactly what personhood and its non-recognition means. What I'm going to do with you this afternoon is to look at the law, look at the kinds of questions or the sort of paradigm that was before the committee in legal terms. What were the contentious issues? How were they resolved? What's the new paradigm? And from there, I want to spend more time with the questions that the organizers had sent me on about 3, what I would say, contentious issues which are being faced by state parties, by civil society, by various people who are trying to make Article 12 and this whole question of equal recognition a reality. Very quickly, because I think now with several presentations, you are kind of familiar with what was the old paradigm. Basically, the old paradigm operates on this premise that all persons above the age of majority are presumed to be of sound mind and possessed of legal capacity. A legal capacity which as such assures autonomy, independence, the ability to be able to make your own decision. But this general presumption of soundness of mind starts to get displaced when it comes to people with intellectual or psychosocial disability. And since this presumption is displaced, both sound mind and capacity have to be proved. They cannot be presumed. Whereas for everybody else, that is the non-disabled community, people who are not seen as persons of unsound mind, it is presumed that you are of sound mind and presumed that you have capacity. It is not something you have to prove. Whereas this burden shifts automatically when you come into the other category. That's a first basic premise, or the first, you could say this is a thrust of the old paradigm. And I think Gabor's entire narrative, his personal narrative, demonstrates that to us in major measure, that a label and the consequences of that label. This particular paradigm was the subject of challenge when the convention was being drafted. The sort of impediment it put forth for people and produced disability is again the part of the narrative which Gabor put forth. I just want to sort of put out for you what were the three major contentious points when the whole reform process was happening. One was that yes, we should have legal capacity, and it should be universal, but it should be universal to the extent that everybody, all persons with all disabilities, all impairments, should have the capacity to have rights, but not the capacity to act. Very, very simply, it would be like you could be inheriting property, but you can't manage it. You could sort of, it's the kind of, you say that yes, I think that particular example captures it. It's to say that yes, we see you as a full bearer of rights, but what you wish to do with those rights, it's you can make choices, provided those choices are the kind which we approve of. The person sitting beside me and whose work I have followed, Professor Applebaum's work, is something I have been a great avid reader of. He's kind of done this classification where you talk in terms of capacity. It's like when you make choices just by status. You say a person is of mental illness, then a person doesn't have capacity. You make decisions which are not desirable, you don't have capacity. He's been a very major proponent of trying to make this test between the kind of function which is required and how you perform it, and then to find out whether you have the capability of performing that particular function. The sort of point which came in as a part of the entire discussion was whether the functional test, though it was definitely a large improvement over the status and outcome test, was still a kind of test which is giving an equal and fair chance to persons with disabilities. I'm sort of just putting that out in that whole business to capacity to act, where you ran into some level of difficulties. The second major reform-related dispute was, should support be distinguished from or made different from substitution? Cannot substitution also be a form of support? Are there not people with disabilities who really, really cannot do it themselves? And if there are such people with such impairments, would it not be honest and fair that this should be forthrightly put into the convention, rather than pretending that all persons with disabilities can act provided you give support? And that's wherein you had the third kind of point being made, that in that rarest of rare cases, allow for substitution to happen, allow it with more safeguards, have judicial oversight if you require it, but you must sort of provide for this within the convention. Gabor has already sort of told us that this business of representation, or to allow for an explicit provision by which representation can be provided for in the convention, did not win the day. And this is what the convention came out with. It said that all persons with disabilities have legal capacity on an equal basis with others in all aspects of life, which meant everything from health to marriage to guardianship to property, whatever. You have the capacity to do each of these things. This also meant that the presumption of sound mind and capacity, which was available to all other persons, got also extended to persons with disabilities and to all persons with disabilities. The third proposition which came with the new paradigm was that capacity does not oust support. The fact that I am a person before the law who can make my own decisions, it nowhere says that I cannot seek help to make those decisions. Actually speaking, in the non-disabled world, whether it is your accounts that you're handling, whether it is the sort of, the housekeeping support that you may be taking, or the childcare support, or even education for that matter, there is a whole range of things that we do with support. It's a myth that, it is only this business of capacity and support are in some manner oppositional, or that they are to be oppositional is only something which was practiced against people with disabilities. What you'll ended up having here now is that to say, I can have legal capacity, but you are still under a duty to provide a whole range of support, and accessing of support does not mean that I do not have capacity. And support cannot be also provided in such manner that it compromises the personality of the person being supported. Support cannot come in a manner in saying, yes, you need support, and this is the support you need, and hence I'm going to decide that, and this is going to be handed out to you. Support, like on a very simple basis, was support, or the provision of a range of support measures was visualized as a duty of the state. To access or not access the support was the right of the person with disability. So this is, as such, the new paradigm which came in, and the tasks necessarily which I think is exactly what you are battling with here in France also, is what, if this is the paradigm, what is it that state parties who have ratified this convention meant to do? You have to change existing laws. That is the kind of presumptions of unsound mind, or the sort of presumptions or the questions that were asked on soundness of mind from a particular category of people. Those questions can't be asked in the law. You needed to enact law and develop practices which are in accord with the new paradigm. Create new legal artifacts of support and remove barriers to the functioning of that support. The legal artifacts of support, how you wish to construct them, what are the kinds of things which are available, what is it that we can draw from each other. The fact that Gabor gave us a very personal narrative of the support system that his mother set up for his stepfather, the manner in which you respected autonomy in a very private kind of an arrangement. Is it necessary that when we are speaking of support, it has to come in a formalized manner? Or are we going to recognize community creating its own support systems? I think the chief guest in the morning, who spoke in terms of the sort of problems that are being faced for the aged, the kinds of issues about what is the system that you should set up in place, to think about alternatives or create artifacts of support which are not only institutionalization. More importantly, to recognize this kind of vulnerability which exists across society, and if that vulnerability is acknowledged as a universal attribute of the human person, to recognize that there's a certain kind of neediness in all of us, then evidently one starts constructing support in more universal terms and not just for people with disabilities. I would think all of these are kind of challenges which are coming before state parties, and how do we wish to address this new paradigm of legal capacity? Is this new paradigm of legal capacity only for people with disabilities? Or is the CRPD, as the latest Human Rights Convention, putting out a new model for human rights? I think it's important to take that second question, because that second question then gets us to start to see the CRPD as a harbinger of a new future, rather than to just see it as what is required for vulnerable people. The question that I would want to put to all of all of us, that is that not the whole patriarchal paradigm of us being very independent, self-sufficient people? Isn't it time to start questioning it and admitting to the fact that we are all autonomous and vulnerable, independent and self-sufficient, both of these, self-sufficient and vulnerable, both together? These are the 3 questions which the organizers sent to me. They found that there is this continuous kind of conflation between legal and mental capacity. The committee in the general comment has pronounced against it. The second was this kind of blurring of boundaries between support and substitution. And the third was what is very particular to France, or at least the question which is sent to me was very particular to France. So I think I will elaborate on that when I reach that particular slide. Conflation of legal and mental capacity. When the law makes the freedom to act on rights dependent upon the cognitive and psychological capabilities of a person, the question, you're making mental capacity, when you make legal capacity and mental capacity, when you conflate them, this is what you'll end up doing. You say that, all right, fine, if you have these kinds of cognitive psychological attributes, if these sort of functional standards you fulfill, then you can do these other acts. Now, my question is only this much. If this is a valid proposition, then its fair application needs that it should be universal. For all kinds of functions and all sorts of tasks, we should be asking everybody to demonstrate a certain level of functional capacity, or on the other hand, a similar kind of functional incapacity. If we possibly can't do it for pragmatic reasons, it's just not possible to test everybody. And so you create the legal presumption. The legal presumption is not the truth. It is what the law wills to be the truth. And it wills it to be the truth because it's convenient that it is the truth. It is convenient as a legal reality. It's not convenient. It's not the true as far as, so it's not true as far as actual lived experience goes. So the presumption is not universal, but selective. And the new paradigm, what it is doing is it seeks the presumption to be extended to all. What is the advantage of universal? I mean, it's all very well to say this is the new paradigm, and much as I respect international law, I wouldn't be asking for us to follow it for its own sake. I wouldn't be saying that because Article 12 says so we do it. My reasons for why I feel there are advantages in universalizing the presumption of sound mind is that the moment we start to say that everybody has competence, we also provide to everybody an equality of opportunity. Labels of incompetence, and there's a large amount of literature which demonstrates it, are like self-fulfilling prophecies. You keep telling a person you can't do it, and progressively the person gets convinced he can't do it. And incompetence is about saying you can't do it and someone else can do it for you. And that's period. We have so-called norms of, saying that this can be, to get out of guardianship is way, way more difficult than to get into it. To say that you have a history of unsound mind, you may have recovered, but that history is going to haunt you everywhere. You would be most of the time hiding it. You won't be talking about it, because if I've had treatment for mental illness, then I have in some manner got myself some kind of a blot which I need to hide so that I'm not prevented from doing other things. And research on competency evaluation. I mean, I have the expert, so I won't be presumptuous enough, but whatever I have read of his work has shown that it's both under and over-inclusive. Sometimes you can get people to be declared incompetent who are not, and sometimes you can say people are competent who are not. So either which way, you are faced with an inevitable error in fact. My only proposition to all of you here is, instead of an inevitable error in fact, is it not preferable to have an empowering fiction? I am not in any which way claiming that, all right, fine, we all have competence to do everything. I'm saying that if the law is extending a presumption of capacity on some people, it should extend that presumption of capacity to all people, and everybody should be given that opportunity to develop them, develop themselves, their personalities, their minds, according to what they are capable of doing. Let us not oust people out. And what the present paradigm or the old paradigm of incapacity was doing was basically, it was an exercise in ouster. The second one, blurring the boundaries of substitution and support. Why is that a problem? See, substitution is always when you're acting instead of me acting, somebody else is acting for me. Support is where somebody is acting with me. And I would introduce here a third category, which is the category which largely the non-disabled world uses, and that's the category of delegation, where you act on the direction of somebody. I don't do everything myself. I ask my chartered accountant to file my tax returns, and I give general directions on what I want. I might hire a manager to look after my estate. I might have a child carer to look after some kinds of responsibilities which I'm not doing myself, but I give broad directions within which it has to be done. Substitution ousts. It always and everywhere it is like you are no longer a person before the law. It is the guardian who becomes the person before the law. Support includes and delegation assists. That's the way in which I see these three there. And I feel substitution can be done without any engagement with the person substituted. Gabor was telling us about the fact of that, all right, it's like a whole range of decisions were made for his mother. His mother was not in the picture. Decisions were made, and the most horrendous one was where they decided to kind of use her as for a drug trial without having asked her, without having even told her. And what you're doing in a paradigm of universal capacity is you cannot work it out through substitution. Because the moment you're speaking about universal legal capacity, you are speaking about the fact of giving people an opportunity. That opportunity cannot really develop if I am not anymore going to be in the picture. That's an extremely important part of why substitution and universal legal capacity cannot work together. To speak in terms of that why cannot we have guardianship being taken as a part of support or any other representative arrangement which is involuntary, in best interest, without engagement with the person concerned, cannot be a basis for running universal capacity. But it allows assistance without losing charge. So if I am able to work out a system by which I'll say, these are and a lot of best practices which have been developed in different parts of the world, you can have a checklist of things and say, these 5 things, nobody other than me these are the things I'm not particularly interested about, I just want these broad things to be taken care of. That general power of attorney which you give out there, but a power of attorney in all laws can only be given by a person who has capacity. So there are a whole range of middle-level legal arrangements which are available, which cannot be even actuated by a person if you are denied legal capacity. And that's exactly where I'm sort of feeling that, no, we need to very clearly understand the difference between substitution and support. What are the consequences of the blur? If we supposing accept it, that all right, let's accept the fact that there could be this very, very minuscule number of people who require substitution. Why can't you include substitution within support? Firstly, I say if substitution is included within support, then there is no need to differentiate between them. When you start to say that this is the general category of support, within which substitution is one kind of support, then substitution is also support. I don't have to say what is substitution and what is support. The other thing, which is also very real, and I know there are a fair number of officials of the state sitting here, but I still am taking the risk to say so. I would somewhere think that because nearly every country has some kind of a system of substitution in place, the moment we start to accept that anything, we are in compliance with the convention. We don't have to think about the whole range. We do not have to expand the categories, because that which the convention also accepts, we are already doing. It may be a strategic point, you can say, but I'm not only making a strategic point, I'm making as much of both a legal and a moral point. I'm definitely saying this, that as human beings, we have to make choices of the kind which are best for humankind. And in making choices in law, you always have the alternative. You can go this or you can go that way. I'm only trying to put forth what are the choices or what are the things that we lose out when we blur support and substitution, when we conflate legal capacity and mental capacity. My last set of questions. I would sort of say I have not done a close study of the French law, but I have done, I would say, a kind of synoptic study of it. And because there were some very, very progressive measures in the law, the fact that it allows a person with disability to seek support on their own, the fact that I can go ahead and do advanced planning for my future and decide how I want to handle things. But simultaneously with that, you also have large number of the ingredients of the old paradigm. You also have a mechanism by which the tutelage system is about a total ouster. Somebody comes and takes over your life virtually. In the curative system also, you have a gradation. You allow for the person with disability to seek support, but you also allow a whole range of other people to make that arrangement. And considering the two are going together, it is a similar kind of conflation between substitution and support. And I would somewhere think that is the progressive elements need to be looked at, and I really was very heartened to see them there. The fact that they came in 2007, simultaneously around as the convention was being done, I suppose it also demonstrates that these ideas were somewhere in the air, and different people were capturing them in different kinds of intensities. At the convention, we had a large community of people with disabilities, people with the requisite experience and expertise who could ensure that this conflation doesn't happen. A similar kind of facility was not available with all states when they sat and did their reform measures. But all reform measures which happen post the convention have to happen with active involvement of people with disabilities. And consequently, possibly some of these errors, it may be easier to weed them out. I'm only making this one distinction. I'm introducing this category of what I call as old and obsolete as people are carrying out their reform measures. Old I am defining as that which happened before the convention. Obsolete is what I'm defining as those particular ideas, those particular provisions which are definitely out of sync in terms of the values as well as the principles which are at the heart of the convention. They are against the spirit of the convention and the spirit of Article 12, and that is why, whilst one would say that the old should be retained and strengthened, the obsolete needs to be weeded out. And if we do not, again, what is the value of undertaking this exercise? If no weeding out done, then the obsolete values would not permit the birth of the new. They will become like barriers. The parts of the old which anticipated the new paradigm could be used, I think, to help lower resistance to the new paradigm, because those particular provisions demonstrate a certain readiness for the new paradigm. It's only a question of that they are adequately foregrounded. So to that extent, the old would allow for a certain continuity to develop. My last slide. I have, in this presentation, tried to sort of demonstrate, show exactly what the old paradigm was, why were we dissatisfied with it, and what is the new paradigm. I've also spoken to you about some of the normative barriers, which are, I'm not speaking in terms of the kinds of, what should I say, the sort of implementational challenges which are there, and I am not in any which way denying their importance. But I'm one of those people who believes that when you think clearly, you do certainly, you do correctly. But if you haven't spent enough time to think through your problems or think through your prejudices, then whether we like it or not, we go and do things which are in effect reinforcing of or replication of those prejudices. So I would say that a paradigm shift is about ushering another way of thinking. It cannot be done by passing off the obsolete as the old and the old as the new. The new paradigm of legal capacity is being constructed to lend voice to an excluded population. This cannot be done with half measures. This is one of those situations where only everything is something and just something is nothing. Thank you so much.
Merci énormément pour nous avoir bien démontré que la capacité juridique, c'est une construction, c'est une construction du droit avec des valeurs de société. D'avoir insisté sur la question de la présomption légale de capacité, la présomption de sanité d'esprit. Je pense qu'on reviendra derrière. Je crois que pour des Français, il peut être un petit peu provoquant de dire qu'une personne n'a plus ses droits, donc n'a plus la jouissance de ses droits lorsqu'elle est placée sous une mesure de substitution. Je veux dire juste à titre de Canadienne que ce saut-là est fait en common law couramment en Amérique du Nord, en disant que quelqu'un qui est placé, par exemple, sous tutelle, l'équivalent de tutelle en France, sera reconnu comme n'ayant plus la jouissance, mais pas l'accès, la jouissance de ses droits fondamentaux. Les commissions de réforme du droit au Canada l'ont dit clairement, l'ont écrit. Donc merci aussi pour avoir pris le temps, et puis là j'ai toute la responsabilité, si jamais il y a eu des incompréhensions, d'avoir fait l'effort d'essayer de voir ce qu'était la curatelle, qui est quand même un système français, mais dont j'ai trouvé peu de traduction en anglais. Donc merci beaucoup pour avoir donné ce regard, et je note évidemment des liens entre vos deux présentations sur la question des barrières, sur la question de l'universalité, sur la question de la personnalité d'une personne qui peut se diluer dans les mesures de protection, et que, et là je laisserai la parole à Fabrice pour me présenter M. Appelbaum, que finalement ces tests qui ont une approche fonctionnelle de la capacité, qui sont fondés sur l'aspect cognitif, peuvent être à la fois pris comme permettant de promouvoir les droits fondamentaux de la personne et éviter des stéréotypages d'emblée, mais aussi vus comme allant à l'encontre des droits fondamentaux de la personne parce que stéréotypant certaines catégories.